Join the mortgage expert Heath Barnes as he equips loan officers and real estate agents with innovative ideas and tools so you can adapt to the changing environments in the marketplace. Be inspired by stories from some of the top professionals in the mortgage world today as they reveal their secrets of what made them successful while gaining knowledge and insight about how they continue their success regardless of the market conditions. Find out how to build a team and scale your business. Get ready to be more productive while working fewer hours. Here is your host, Heath Barnes.
Welcome to another episode of Mortgages Reimagined. I'm your host, Heath Barnes, and I am tickled blue to have my guest today. My guest has been in the business since 1999. He spent most of those years as an ops manager, learning the business before deciding in 2009 to have his own hand in the mortgage business as a loan officer. And in that year, made more money than he ever made in his life. Help me welcome from Southern California, mine now, what I call good friend, Justin Brown. Welcome, Justin.
Hey, thank you so much, man. Pleasure and honor to be on.
I like to call you the TikTok king. 80,000 followers and social media star. And that one of the reasons I wanted to have you on today. But before we get into that, I'm sure our listeners would love to hear a little bit more of your background and kind of how you got into the business, Justin.
Yeah, no. When I was younger, my stepdad had a branch in the mortgage business. His family had a mortgage company, and my mom was a paralegal. So when I was in high school, that was kind of just, she was doing the paralegal thing, he was doing the mortgage thing, and they decided to move up to Arizona and open a branch there. And my mom quit her paralegal job and went to go help him and learn the business with them and build their deal together. I stayed behind because I'm not leaving my senior year of high school, Southern California, to go to Arizona. I'm good. So I stayed behind and started painting houses on the weekends and delivering pizza at night, and shacked up in a house, rented a house with some friends, and we all just paid rent and partied and, did our thing. And eventually after a little bit, I was like, okay, I kind of have no direction with this. I don't want to keep painting houses at night. And I'd actually go hit up realtors for business, for painting houses.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was funny because I was kind of already realtor prospecting back then. But I hated it, man. I remember I painted one house and they're like, this isn't the color we agreed on for this. And I'm like, yes, it is. I have it written down right here. You signed it. No, it's not. You're not getting paid till it's done. So then I ended up losing money on that job. I had another job where, equipment got stolen, and another job where they didn't pay me, even though there was no disagreement. They just ghosted me. And it was just like, okay, I'm over this. I'm going to figure out something else. I'll go out there.
You at the time? 17, 18?
I was
19?
17. I turned 18 my senior year. So I was 17 doing this.
Yeah.
And by the time I was like 19, I'm like, okay, I got to figure out something else. So I moved out to Arizona, got finally convinced, because I was a troublemaker. So my mom was like, no, you're not going to work for us. You're just, you need to become responsible first. I'm like, I am responsible, whatever. So I ended up finally getting them to bring me on as like an assistant, making coffee, making copies, taking out the trash, stuff like that. And, she'd have me call and do order outs, like call and update this mortgagee clause, call this appraiser and tell them we need an invoice, do this, do that. That's when we were getting appraisals with Polaroids on them still, if you remember that.
Those are the old days in 99, and nothing was digital at that point. We were overnighting packages.
Transbox. I was running Transbox all day.
What's Transbox?
Transbox was like our FedEx in Arizona. I don't know if they had it where else they had it, but there was Transbox locations. So we had the envelopes, and we'd shove the docs or whatever in it, and I was just running stuff around, getting them delivered. So I did that.
Like 7 documents for them to sign. Nowadays we have 50, but it's all digital. So
yeah.
Anyways, you were saying?
No, so I worked there for a few months, but it was like that old TV show, Orange County Choppers, with the dad and son duo that just were at each other's throats nonstop. And that was us. I got fired twice a week. It was kind of cool because it was kind of like getting suspended from school. I just got the day off and I knew I was going to be back the next day. but it was chaos. So after about, 3, 4, 5 months, maybe 6 months, I don't remember. It was after a little bit. I was like, hey, I really like this business because the days just go by so fast and it's just like problem solving. And, I liked it. And I saw the money people were making. So I got a resume dialed in. I put that I had been doing it 2 years, even though it was only like 6 months. I started sending it out, and I got who we both know, Randall Mills. When I was like 19 or 20 at the time, he picked up my resume and called me in, and he was okay with my lack of experience. And I think it was because it was a really low salary requirement at the time, like minimum wage.
Maybe because of his lack, he had a little lack of experience. What year was this?
This was 2000, maybe. I don't even think I was 21.
Were you in Arizona?
Yeah, I was in Arizona. Okay. I was still out there. So I went to work for him, and I learned a lot there. I was with him for quite some time, on and off. And then from there, I moved back to California years later. Got a job out here, running a processing department, became an ops manager. When the market was crashing in 2007, I was an ops manager at a company, and I saw we were taking losses every month. But we ended up surviving until I think December of 2008. He couldn't make payroll and basically let everybody go. Everybody left that day, but he kept me and 2 other people and paid us, and was like, I need you guys to help me wind down. So we stayed on board until like January 2009. I was like, hey, just make it so that I could get unemployment. Like, let me go. Cause he offered me, like, come with me. We're merging with Skyline Financial. I know Bill Dallas. We're going to go over there. We're going to do this thing. I'll make you the VP of this. I'm like, cool. What do I get paid? He's like, oh, it's going to be commission only. I'm like, well, I've never worked commission only. And 2, if I'm going to do commission only, I'm going to give it a go on my own. Versus, cause he had like a call center setup type of deal. And that was rough. So I ended up going on my own. I was like, hey, I'm getting unemployment. I moved back in with my in-laws at the time, which wasn't fun. I'm going to give it a go on my own. Back then. It was.
You've had a salary your whole life. You decide, okay, like what brought you to that point where you're like, you know what, I'll just go on my own?
Because I was looking for a job and nobody would pay what I was used to. I was making like 6 figures as an ops guy. And then as I'm putting my resume out, people are offering me 20,000, 30,000, small bonuses. I'm like, I can't live off that. I have a newborn, married, living at my in-laws. Like, wow, I can't do this. So when I finally gave up on trying to find another ops job, I, talked to my ex-wife at the time, my wife at the time, and was like, look, let me just give it a go on my own for a few months. If after 3 to 6 months, there's no traction, then I'll just go to the police academy. I'll just start over. But I just had put 10 years into this business. Like, I don't want to start over if I don't have to. Let me at least try on my own, because during that time in ops, I worked with a lot of LOs that I was like, man, if they could do it, I should be able to do this one day, Right. And so I went for it. And my first, I didn't make any money for about 3 months. I think it was my 4th month or the end of my 3rd month. I ended up making like $45,000, more money than I had ever made in a month, let alone even over that few months was good money. And then from there, now, the pipeline was built.
Was your wife working at the time, or were you the sole bread? Okay.
So, I was the sole breadwinner.
Takes a lot of courage to jump out on your own and not knowing what the future holds. So 45,000 your next month.
Yeah. Wow. So, and then the rest of that year, I ended up closing, I think it was like 40 or 50 loans. And I had made more money that year than I had ever made in my life. And I never looked back. So I kept originating since then and growing. Turned it into, within 6 months or less, we ended up moving out, getting our own place again. I was still worried about being commissioned and being on my own. So I was like prepaying my rent for 6 months at a time and trying to live frugally. Opened a small office location and wouldn't hire anybody. It was just me and, working crazy hours building my business. But the money was coming in and we were building something. I was building something. And then after a few years of that, of me being at the office till midnight every night, going in early and just working crazy hours, even though we had, then bought a house and things were going good. I just knew I couldn't live like that anymore. And I went to the Vegas Mastermind and saw, I think you were on stage actually. And Shayla and Rick, were you on stage at the Vegas Mastermind in like 20, whatever, one of the years?
I don't think so. But
it was one of the early years that they were there. Anyways, I saw everybody on stage like, yeah,
yeah,
closed X amount of loans and I work 40 hours a week. Yeah, this. I'm
yeah,
like, oh my. So there is a way. Oh my gosh. So
yeah,
I signed up with the core, was with the core for about 7 years. And through that time, I was able to I learned how to build a business,
yeah,
learned how to build a business that could run without me for the most part. Got to the point where, built a good database, built, good team, and was able to spend most of my time working on the business versus in it and working 40 hours a week and all of that. And then COVID hit. Which kind of changed everything because a lot of people were saying, they kind of ignored refis because they wanted to focus on purchases. And I honestly, by that time was like, look, I built a solid database and I'm really good at marketing to them. Even if the market shifts or whatever, I should always be able to close a decent amount of loans a month out of my database alone. And I honestly got burned out on chasing realtors. I was just done with
Let me ask you about your database. Like, how did you know, like, because so many loan officers, I think even young loan officers don't keep track of their database. And it's such a valuable tool. Did somebody tell you to do that or just?
So over those 10 years of working in ops, I worked for some really good loan officers and some really bad ones. And the one thing I knew when I started originating, the one thing I did right away was get a database, and every person I talked to, every lead I ever got, they were going in it and they were getting marketed to. So that's just something I knew from every successful LO I had ever worked for. They were part of the old loan toolbox, by referral only. Like, so I saw those successful LOs having a database and taking care of their datasbase.
Yeah.
So I did that from day one.
Joe Stump. Did you ever follow Joe Stump?
No, but I worked for LOs that were with the buy referral group. So I wasn't, I was just watching the LOs do their thing, and I saw their, who they were with, that they were with Joe Stump and buy referral only coaching. So I just was in the background seeing what it was doing for their business.
Yeah.
And just knowing the mechanics of it all, where having a database and taking care of them.
Yeah, and we met about 2 years ago when we did an amplified event. And I remember, what struck me was like how many followers you had on TikTok. You had like almost 100,000, I think, or 80,000 out of date. And I'm curious, like, when did you take a hold of, embrace social media? Because a lot of, including myself, do not necessarily subscribe to social media, but it looks like it's had a good impact in your business and it's created a business where it sounds like you work on your business more than in your business, correct?
So yes. So prior to COVID, I was doing 60 to 80 realtor calls a week. I had 120 leads a month coming from agents, closing 20, 30 loans a month, purchase, realtors. And no matter how great of a team I had, it was still, nights and weekends, I'd still, it was tough, man. And it was a grind. And after doing that for years, I got burned out on it. And I knew, look, I have over 2,000 people in my database. If at least a couple % of them a year, I get them to do business with me, I could live off that. So when COVID hit, I saw a lot of LOs working crazy hours, and I wasn't still, because my team was taking care of everything going on during COVID, all the refis and stuff. And I chose to spend that time saying, look, if I turn into a refi guy right now and everything changes and I kind of get screwed on these purchases, ignoring them, that's okay with me. Because during this time, I want to figure out how to go consumer direct. And at the end of the day, when the dust settles, if my business goes down, I know how to turn it back on. I know how to roll up my sleeves and make it happen. And I will if I have to. But in the meantime, if business slows down, but I have a much better, balance in my life, that's okay too. I make good money, So I was like, look, I'm going to use this time, let my team run the refis, but I'm going to figure out how to go consumer direct. And if at the end of the day falls apart, then I will roll up my sleeves and I will make it happen. So during that time, I just started, diving into YouTube, diving into marketing coaching, marketing courses, marketing books, really just trying to learn marketing. Because I also figured if I get really good at marketing, then I should always do okay.
Yeah.
And I started, well, I was trying to do YouTube. And then one of my buddies was like, why don't you try TikTok? I'm like, TikTok? He's like, yeah, I give it a, he showed me what it was. And I saw that guy, Scott Bentley on there, and that guy crushes it on TikTok. He's
What's his name?
king. Scott Bentley.
Okay.
So I saw like some interviews from him at the time because he was crushing it on TikTok. And his interviews, he kind of walked through his process, how he did it. I started following him. And I'm like, okay, I'll give it a go on TikTok. And I did. And honestly, within a couple of weeks, I had a video go viral. It hit like a couple million views.
Really?
And all of a sudden, my followers went kind of crazy on there too. And
So
same
what
thing
was
on
the
Instagram.
video?
It was
Like,
on doing a custodial Roth for your kid, a custodial Roth IRA, which is for your kids. And how, look, if you put, a couple hundred a month in there from this age and until they're 18, and 18, they take over, they could retire a millionaire, start them young. And,
Wow.
and that just went viral. So it wasn't mortgage content. But when I started figuring out what content am I going to do, us as loan officers are always talking about building wealth. I'm like, well, this was a journey I was on for myself and my family anyways, where I was learning personal finance. I was buying out-of-state rentals. I was, diving into how to set up my own retirement accounts, how investing works, and just really taking control over those finances myself. So I was like, look, people who want to buy a home are buying a home because they want to build something for their future, right?
Right.
So why not mix in other knowledge in there? Because at the end of the day, they're going to be interested in that too. But so I did that. So that's where I started with it. And then as that grew, I did start getting way too many inquiries and way too much stuff around things that aren't going to make me any money, like the personal finance stuff. So I had to kind of rein it back in. There was a lot of learning involved on how to convert that audience into closings, because I did get a big following pretty quickly. And, but during those first 6 to 8 months of building my social media and being really busy on social media, I wasn't getting a lot of closings from it still, but I was hooked on it. Like, there's got to be a way to make this work,
Yeah.
So I did.
What was the missing link? What
the
was the
missing
missing link that for you to take it from just having a decent following to actually converting that to closed loans?
Yeah. So anybody watching this that wants to go down this path, one, you have to figure out content, start posting, grow your audience, but that alone doesn't do it, right? The next thing you have to do is convert that audience. So whenever you sign up for something, or whenever you start the checkout process, or you click to get more info from any good company that has good marketing involved, what usually happens? You start to get follow-up emails, you start to get drips, you start to get like, hey, you want to finish what you started? So you have to learn like follow-up, right? So you have to have an opt-in. You have to get those people into your database. You have to figure out, how do I capture Heath's cell phone and email? You're following me, you like me, but if I don't have a call to action, and my call to action can't be just, hey, call me, hey, do this, it has to be giving you something to get something from you. So I started figuring out having what's called a lead magnet. So having like my Calendly on there, click here for a free consultation, download my free home buyer guide, download my free calculator on how to calculate rental property income. So I came up with, so I put some lead magnets in there to where, hey, if you want something, put in your email and phone number and I'll give it to you.
Yeah.
And then once I have that, you're in my database, and I start following up via text, via email, all that stuff.
So your lead magnet was being able to book time for you. It was being able to use
Calendly.
your calculator. Okay.
Yeah. So I did have like my free home buyer guide, but I didn't have any follow-ups on it. So, having something that they could download that gives them more information on what you're talking about, but capturing their info and turning on automations, because I'll get 150 leads in a month or more, and I'm not going to follow up with all those internet leads, but my system will automatically for me. And as soon as they raise their hand saying, yes, I actually do have more questions, my team takes over from there.
Okay. And in the very beginning, like content, what were some quick lessons when you were coming up with content that you said, hey, I got to remember to do this, that you feel like had an impact on the people that were watching? So what's some advice on content?
Finding content is basically figuring out what the audience wants, not what you want. So to do that, I would just look on TikTok and just see what type of content's already performing. I would start looking at what mortgage content got the most views and has the most engagement. What was the topic about? What were they talking about? And I would just then repurpose that and just make it my own, just put my own spin on it, put my own voice on it. And then you could go to websites like, I think askthepublic.com is one that will show you like the most searched questions around a topic. So you can put in home buying and it'll show you the most searched questions around home buying. You could put in, property, whatever. You could put in different topics and it'll tell you the most searched questions around that, and you could use that. So it's one, instead of like you thinking you have a good idea, just if you get common questions from your clients around the same thing, use that.
Right.
Go online and look on YouTube and see what videos are on mortgages on YouTube got the most views, and use those topics.
Yeah. I think just being aware in your daily activity when you're with clients, either points of confusion or just any incident that happens can create daily content just through, being aware. So, one of the things we talked about earlier that I'm super impressed with is, you work 35 hours a week, you spend Fridays on your mountain bike. And so you rely a lot on your team, right, to convert these leads. And you're really not that involved in the process. Your team is handling it. What's the data that you're looking at to make sure that your team is taking care of your business? Do you have daily numbers that you're looking at, or weekly numbers, or when do you know, okay, I need to get involved?
Yeah. So we do daily team meetings. So I still meet with them every day. We go over all the leads that have come in, and we use Jungo really heavily. So they put in notes and all of that. I could look. So every lead that comes in, my CRM will text them automatically for me, and I could get a report of any leads that responded, and I could see like what our responses were. Right. So I could look at I could look at the leads every day, and we just do a quick meeting. Okay, what's going on with this, and this? If a lead doesn't get responded to, I could see that. So there was heavier accountability at first, but now they understand the requirements and what the expectations are, and I don't have to handhold them as much with that stuff. But we still check on it every day. I'll look at how many sets of docs in we're getting in a week. We'll look at the leads, that are coming in, and just make sure the numbers stay in line. If the numbers aren't in line or they start to drop off, then we have to dive into the analytics. What's going on here? How come our numbers are declining? We used to get 50% of docs in would turn into an escrow. And then that changed the beginning of this year. But then as we looked into it, it's like, well, what changes? There's no inventory, right? Okay. So how do we improve this? What offers are getting accepted? Oh, it's the ones where we know the agents, or the ones with larger down payments. Cool. Let's start marketing more on, agent happy hours and agent networking, and start doing more investor, content on social media, because investors put more money down.
Yeah.
So I look at the analytics all the time. I coach my team on the analytics. We figure out our marketing around the analytics, and for the most part, just having very clearly defined job roles and duties and metrics to track just helps manage all that.
Yeah, I love that. You letting go of the everyday activities and allowing your team to perform for you, right? Yeah, I love that. So what I heard you say as far as creating, it's not just about content, it's about and creating an audience, but it's also about conversion and converting that client. How often is your team there? Are they looking for a phone call? Like the conversion, is it just what's the conversion? Is it a phone number? Is it just an email? Is it on the phone? Like, what do you call
so
a
the
conversion?
the leads that come in, so a conversion for me is getting docs in an application, but the leads come in a lot of different ways. So sometimes people will just DM me. If they DM me, I will answer the question. Those are the only leads I'll really talk to, is the ones that DM me directly. So I'll just answer their question. If they want to take it further, I just push them to schedule a time on the calendar, on the Calendly link, using Calendly. And then Calendly, once they schedule it, it pushes them into my CRM. It sends them, a reminder. It lets my team know, and then my team will call if they don't make that appointment. So my team takes it over from there and pushes to get an application in Docs.
Yeah.
Or they'll just download stuff online from my link in my bio. And if they do that, my CRM will automatically text follow up. Hey, Heath, I saw you downloaded my home buyer guide yesterday. Did you have any questions at all on it? If you do, feel free to text me here anytime. And then a couple days later, so did you plan on buying a home this year? Is there anything we could help with? And then, until it'll go until they reply. And then once they reply, my team will see the reply and they could either disposition it, long-term drip, basically just leave them alone, or they'll start taking it from there and follow up and try to get them to apply and get on the phone. But all those downloads aren't us having to do anything until they raise their hand saying, yeah, actually I do have questions, or yeah, actually I do want to buy a home.
And I think a lot of listeners will say, well, when they book the link with Calendly, they probably think that they're going to be meeting with you. What does your team say when they hop on and they don't see you?
So I always put the message, my team, and everything. So when I'm DMing people, yeah, my team will help you. Yeah, my team would be happy to help you. Every once in a while, somebody's like, well, it's not going to be you directly. No, it's going to be my team. They're awesome. And I'm still here to help if something comes up,
Right.
So, and then my team says the same thing. They're like, oh, we've been following Justin, and, are we going to talk to him at all? Oh yeah, absolutely. He'll check in or whatever. And they'll just give me a heads up on those ones. And those ones I'll check in.
Right.
It's how they doing or whatever. And I'll just do a little touch on it. But they'll no, but we could help, absolutely. That's what we do, because a lot of times I'm putting out the message of helping build wealth, helping, analyze and find rental properties and run the numbers, and just giving more guidance than they're used to from a mortgage company. Guidance on personal finance, guidance on investing, budgeting, all that stuff. And so my team's trained on doing all that. And then if they need me to jump in, I will, honestly, but it's very few and far between. And same thing, we'll get hit up by realtors too on social media. Hey, how are you working with agents? Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Here's my team. Yeah. So what's your number? I'll have Yuri on my team call you right away. Oh, it's not going to be you. No, it's not. But Yuri's awesome. He'll take care of you. Okay, great. Have him call me. And then I'll see leads start coming from that realtor that I never spoke to. And I'll talk to my team oh, hey, Yuri, so-and-so sending leads, that lady. Yeah, she is. She sounds good. Yeah, we already got a couple. I got docs in on this one. Great. I love it. Take care of her.
And I know a lot of the listeners, or at least myself, I don't know about the listeners, would be like, oh, we think that we're the only ones that can take really good care of both clients and realtors. And I think the message that I hear you saying is when you let go and let your team handle it, and allow them to take the process. What advice would you give to those loan officers who still feel like that they need to control that process, or they need to control the transaction?
You don't need to. And it's just about setting the right expectation up front. If you're prospecting realtors, and then you finally get them to meet and you're afraid to tell them no, well, then you're never going to do business on your terms. Never. But I'm not afraid to tell them no. I'm not afraid to hold on to my terms, even if I lose the business, because I know I'll get other ones. I know I have a database now. I know I have enough, I'm okay to lose and go and not do as much business, because then the business I do is all on my terms and I get to have the balance in life I want.
Yeah. So what are 2 or 3 expectations that you set with your team, and they understand, okay, this is the expectation that y'all need to be meeting on a daily or weekly basis?
What they know my role is to drive business in the door. My role is to keep the phones ringing, keep the leads coming in, and keep us busy. That's my job, and that's what I'm going to spend my time doing, because if I don't, none of us have jobs.
Yeah.
If it's just me doing it, it's going to be a different setup, guys. So they understand that. And then my junior LOs understand it's their job to convert these things so that they make money, right? Because my juniors do get paid BIPs. And so if they want to make a good living and make some money, they're going to have to convert the leads. And then my LOAs understand the same thing. They need to support the juniors, keep them on the phones, keep them converting, by putting the deals together, by taking the deals through closing and all of that. So it's just them understanding this is how the machine works, having them buy into the machine and having it be a good balance for them. Because if you set up a process and a system that you're constantly undermining and you're constantly micromanaging, then they're never really going to be bought into it. And they're never really going to feel like they have like the freedom or the job security even that makes them happy. Where my team culture is really good because I give them a lot of freedom and flexibility because they execute and they understand if you execute and keep me doing what I want to do, I'll keep you guys doing what you are highest and best doing. We'll all love our job.
Yeah, I love that. And, well, I appreciate you sharing your ideas and how you got into social media and the impact it's having on both you and your team. I'd love to hear, before I let you go, a quote or a book or an idea that you've heard really recently that our audience might be able to take with them.
I think the biggest thing that's helped me be successful was learning how to run a business, was learning how to delegate to my team and basically spend my time working on it, not in it. And I know that's a big struggle for loan officers. So my number one tip around that or book around that is pick up the book Traction. It's called Traction by, let me see who it's from.
Gino Wickman.
Yes. That book is an amazing book and lays out the foundation. I feel like the core picked up a lot from that book or has a lot of the same principles that I learned from that book. But that would be my number one book recommendation for any LO who wants to build an actual business. Because there's, I think from the E-Myth, there's something they talk about. You could be a great cook and because of that, open your own restaurant. But if you're the cook in your own restaurant, it's never going to grow and you're going to work until your gray old, your old age, and you're going to be grinding away for a long time.
Yeah. It's called the difference between a business operator and a business owner. It's obviously you're a business owner, not a business operator, because you're allowing your team to take the reins. So I sincerely appreciate you being with us today, Justin. If our audience wants to get a hold of you, what's the best way for them to do that?
On Instagram, Loans by JB. So Loans by JB on Instagram.
Loans by JB on Instagram. All right. Well, thanks again, Justin. And I'm sure we'll see you around the corner here real soon.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for listening today. Hopefully this discussion inspires you by providing new tools to shape your business so you can become a more innovative and cutting-edge professional in the mortgage space. Join Heath in more conversations with the industry's top leaders by subscribing to the podcast at www.heathbarnes.com. That's www.heathbarnes.com.